Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Isabel Martinez, and welcome to my presentation, Bridging the Gap, Fostering Inclusive Learning for Visually Diverse Learners in the EFL Classroom. Well, equity, equality, and inclusion are fundamental principles of education and basic human rights, and thus they should not be disregarded. In that regard, European and Spanish laws, as well as UN guidelines, aim to promote inclusion and participation of all students in the classroom. However, despite these efforts, full inclusion has not been achieved, yet at least. Instead, mainstreaming has been implemented as a solution to promote inclusion, although this approach has led to a dilemma, as it requires adaptations that can result in a hidden form of segregation, and thus a less inclusive setting. Now, the pilot study hereby described seeks to analyse the status quo of visual diversity in the English as a foreign language classroom in a Spanish higher education context. The study aims to identify social barriers for this collective in the higher education context in Spain. To that end, the study was conducted at Universidad Jaume I with the collaboration of the Diversity and Disability Unit for data gathering. And this research aims to answer two fundamental research questions. What are the perceptions and experiences of visually diverse learners regarding the accessibility of learning materials and methodology in the EFL classroom in Spanish higher education context? And what are the challenges and barriers faced by visually diverse learners in accessing and participating in the EFL classroom? And by addressing these research questions, this study seeks to contribute to inclusive education, to foster equitable learning environment that cater to the diverse needs of visually diverse learners in the EFL context in Spanish higher education. As I said before, this pilot study was carried out at Universidad Jaume I, and research employed a quantitative method, a questionnaire, to gather data on the experiences of visually diverse learners regarding EFL methodology and classroom dynamics in this specific context. The study spanned 3 years, encompassing both pre-COVID-19 and pandemic era data. This timeframe is crucial in methodology, as the pandemic prompted a transition from traditional teaching methods to online formats. Now, to begin with, a series of meetings were arranged with the staff at the Diversity and Disability Unit at the university. First, to enable the researcher, me, to get acquainted with disabilities in the institutional context and understand the approaches taken. Second, to communicate the data requirement of the research, and then the unit facilitated contact with a tutor at ONFE, with whom consultation video conferences were scheduled. And these meetings definitely influenced question design in the survey. After that, in order to ensure that the research complied with ethical guidelines, approval was sought and obtained from the ethics committee. Next, the Diversity and Disability Unit aided in volunteer recruitment for the study. The survey was then conducted to collect data from students with visual functional diversity. The questionnaire included different sections to solicit information related to students' profile, aspects of catering for special needs, language skills, how language learning was addressed during the pandemic. Now, the data collected for this study comprises the academic years 2019-2020 and 2020-2021. Now, during the former, there were 14 potential participants in the study. During the latter, 15. Nevertheless, there was a variation in the degree of disability among the users. In the context where the study was conducted, a disability is attested by an official organism, namely the Generalitat Valenciana. It's considered a disability when the sight loss percentage, in this case, is equal or higher than 33%. Right, so for this pilot study, visually diverse learners at the institution were contacted by means of 2 written messages crafted by the researcher, both an invitation and a reminder to participate. Now, the Diversity and Disability Unit at the university was in charge of sending these messages in order to comply with data protection laws and ethical regulations. Even though these were sent to potential participants, only 3 volunteered for the study. Now, the survey was designed using Qualtrics and approved by the University Ethics Committee. Now, initially, the questionnaire was offered in Catalan and Spanish, even though this pilot study aims to analyze the experience of students with visual functional diversity in the EFL classroom. The survey was not offered in English to prevent frustration and stress among respondents who may not feel confident in the language, given that their level of English was not the object of the study in this case. So providing a question in English could have supposed an even lower participation rate. In general, the survey administered to students included 4 blocks comprising a total of 36 questions. However, the flow of the survey was dynamic, meaning that the replies would condition which questions would be shown. And therefore, some questions could be omitted depending on the replies provided. Now, as a result, the number of questions presented to participants varied depending on their choices. And the survey was designed to last a maximum of 13 minutes in its longest version. Now, the first block of questions was pertinent for statistical and demographic purposes. The question in the second block were designed to gather data on the behavior of students and lecturers. The following block was related to language skills, and the last block referred to COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the survey gathered learners' views on the methodology followed during the pandemic, the perceived level of difficulty of lessons, and the implementation of ICT as an assistive tool during the pandemic. Right, so results show that the Diversity and Disability Unit was used as a point of connection and communication with the teaching staff, but learners also actively approached their lecturers to notify them about the necessary adaptations for successfully completing the modules. Now, 2 of the participants considered that the course materials were accessible enough, although one of them reported that the lecturer failed to implement adjustment to ensure the accessibility of materials. Now, based on these findings, it appears that the lecturers employed limited methods to make materials accessible for these learners, which indicates a lack of adequate knowledge and resources to ensure that learning is accessible for this cohort of students. Right. Now, research literature has highlighted changes faced by visually diverse students in completing listening and listening comprehension activities. Now, in this study, learners were asked about their approach when the pace of the lesson exceeded their typing skills, and 67% of them preferred to have the information repeated to ensure that they complete their notes, or they arrange a meeting with a lecturer during attention hours. Other participants rely on peer notes, or they approach the lecturer after the lesson to compensate for missed information. Respondents in this questionnaire unanimously agreed on the need for additional time during class and in exams. When inquired about speaking tasks that rely on visual prompts, for instance, they indicated that they prefer read aloud assistance from peers or teachers, or if their site allows, enlarging font size is also an option. The necessity for adaptations in reading comprehension activities emphasizes the importance of time accommodation, especially. Regardless of whether they use text-to-speech tools or not, all participants reported requiring more time compared to their peers. And those who do not rely on read aloud software, they said that they don't need an enlarged font either because they use the built-in zoom feature of their laptops. When provided with the text in advance, students, regarding reading comprehension, students unanimously sought assistance from the instructor, either for a read aloud or to obtain an accessible version of the documents. And it's interesting to point out that nobody chose the option of having the text orally recorded for them in advance, which, I mean, having the text available in an oral format that can be accessed at any time can be an advantage in foreign language learning, as the intonation and pronunciation of the oral text would be more natural compared to machine-read information. Now, 1/3 of the respondents mentioned the digitalization of the paper into compatible format. Others reported receiving help from a private tutor, or when presented with a new text in class. All informants preferred avoiding this situation and would request having the text in advance so they could prepare it at home. Some of the participants would ask the lecturer to read it aloud in class. Now, these results show that thorough preparation is required from the lecturer to anticipate any possible barriers and facilitate materials in advance. Now, as mentioned before, data during COVID-19 pandemic were collected, which encompassed lockdown and new normality periods. The participants who took the English course during COVID reported completing it synchronously through real-time online sessions. So listening comprehension tasks would have looked identical to what they would have been in in-person lessons. This approach was deemed suitable and accessible by the students. In fact, it aligns with the preferred methodology they indicated afterwards. In terms of access to knowledge and equity among learners, visually diverse students generally perceive that they were granted equal access. However, they considered that lecturers lacked some training in managing a diverse classroom environment, which to their minds should be a mandatory requirement in educators. Right, in conclusion, this pilot study investigated the experiences of visually diverse learners in the EFL university classroom in Spain and aimed to address specific research questions to shed light on the challenges and perceptions regarding accessibility in this educational context. Regarding the first research question, the study revealed that visually diverse learners face significant challenges in accessing and fully participating in their English language education. Despite some efforts by lecturers to make material accessible, the adaptations remained limited, hindering their active engagement and potentially leading to information gaps. And the second research question explored the challenges and barriers faced by visually diverse learners in accessing and participating in EFL education. The findings highlighted a lack of adequate adaptations in teaching methodologies, indicating a need for more comprehensive and inclusive approaches to cater to the diverse needs of visually impaired learners. Right. Overall, the findings of this study underscore the necessity for proactive preparation from lecturers to anticipate barriers and facilitate materials in advance, fostering an inclusive and accessible learning environment for these learners. By addressing these challenging and implementing more comprehensive adaptations, educators and policymakers can work towards promoting equitable opportunities and enhancing the learning experiences of visually diverse learners in this context. This research also shed light on the pivotal role of technology as an ally for the educational adaptations, as it was evident during the pandemic. technology can enhance accessibility and support adaptive strategies, which is crucial to ensure equitable access to education. The study results come with several limitations that must be considered when interpreting these results. Now, a larger sample would have strengthened the accuracy of the findings. The research was confined to one higher education institution, limiting the generalizability of the results, although the same results can be corroborated in other studies. Moreover, the sample size was restricted to the field of English language teaching and learning, further narrowing the study's context. The small number of participants presented challenges, not only because not all eligible candidates volunteered to participate. Furthermore, the study could have benefited from a mixed methods approach in which to include qualitative data. The absence of learner interviews was unfortunate due to data protection laws. Interviews could have provided more in-depth information and prompted new questions for further exploration, as the questionnaire can be restricting in that regard. Nonetheless, the study considered the experiences and opinions of visually diverse students, contributing valuable insights to inclusive education. Future studies should delve further at a larger scale into the experiences of these learners and faculty members in charge of imparting lessons to a diverse audience. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd love to read your thoughts or questions in the comments section below. Thank you very much. Bye.